Hello, everybody, and welcome to a little mini-sode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm Legend1 of Poker Stars.
And I'm your other host, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars. Hey, Ben, nothing really happened to us over the last few days. So we're really just doing this episode to talk about Poker Stars, which we're both, big fans of. And.
Yeah, it was a pretty boring week. I did win this Rec.poker home game, but besides that, there's nothing important going on.
Yeah, I think. What did I do in that tournament again?
You made the final table, I think.
Oh, okay.
You made the final table.
I don't remember.
I think you made it to the final half of the final table, even. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, guys, just aside here, sarcasm aside, we are just wanted to give our feedback on what was a very enjoyable Monday night of poker-related experiences. We had the privilege of being a part of the Rec.poker podcast. I believe it was episode 727. Mm-hmm. And that was a fun hour where we got to meet Jim and some of the other Rec.poker crew, get to be on the other end of the interview equation, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've been interviewed in the local news in the past. I've been interviewed for a couple documentaries. So this isn't something that I'm unused to. But yeah, it was fun being on a podcast, especially as there were four other people there. I thought it was just going to be Jim and maybe one other person, but there were two. There were four people in total.
And actually kind of five if you count Rob Gardner, kind of in the background too.
Yeah, so really there's like seven of us all together. And yeah, it was really nice because it was a natural conversation. It wasn't like we're going to ask you a question, we give an answer, and then it's on to the next question. It felt free form. And it was just a lot of fun to be on.
Yeah, it was fun because their podcasts, they have the live chat window happening. So there were some questions that I wanted to engage with. There were a few times where I went back and wanted to answer some questions that people had about us. That was kind of fun. And it was also nice to kind of have a sort of a spontaneity where you might say one thing and then one of the four from Rec.poker wanted to follow up on that a little bit later on. So it just felt very, very fun, and I felt that we each got our chance to speak our own pieces, and they have a great setup there. The internet was kind of spotty. I think on our end was the main issue, but hopefully it didn't translate to a very choppy experience when you're watching it on rewatch.
Yeah, and also they aired the trailer for season 2 of Chase the Dream, which we reviewed on this podcast previously. We both liked. It had its issues, but it was a pretty good, little web series. And they've really stepped up their game with season 2. There's a lot of new stories. It seems like the camera and editing setup is a lot improved, and so I'm really excited to see that. It was really good trailer, and I'm very curious.
Yeah, and we also had some very nice, productive conversations with Rob Gardner. He reached out to us after the fact. He watched our review of Chase the Dream Season 1, and he provided some background information as far as the production of Season 1 and why maybe certain elements were done in a certain fashion. And it was just fun to kind of just have a dialogue and really exchange words about something that we spent some time to sit down and analyze, and it was just nice to actually have the creator of something that we have discussed and podcast about just talk to us. So that was pretty cool too.
Yeah, back in the day when I used to write restaurant reviews, sometimes I would hear through the grapevine that certain people didn't really like restaurant reviews that I wrote. So it's nice to have a review of something, and Rob took it very well. And Rob, if you're listening, thank you so much for reaching out to both of us and for your involvement in the podcast episode. We'll definitely try to have you on at some point. We'll obviously follow up with you and talk to you about exact details. I'm really excited to review season 2 once it comes out. We'll probably wait until the whole thing comes out.
Yeah, right? I think it makes sense. We did it for the most part for season 1. It makes sense to do that again for season 2. And also just the trailer itself was very juicy. It had a great cliffhanger in it. And again, I think Jim Reed is going to be one of the subjects in question. So again, it's nice to have someone that we can really get behind as far as rooting for somebody in the documentary. And I think the release, it's going to probably be in September, maybe into October. A couple parts will be released in October. So really, we should be able to get around to it pretty soon. Yeah,
it should be fun.
Besides that, Sam, I read in the grapevine that season 2 of Game of Gold is not happening. Granu actually mentioned, I think it was in August or July of this summer, that it was not looking likely that there'd be season 2. And it's not that I was surprised so much. I looked at the YouTube views for season 1, and again, they were just okay. I felt like the big game on tour was a much bigger success, for example, and that's probably a much cheaper operation, not being filmed overseas I feel like that kind of content maybe was a bit more of a safer bet for YouTube. But for Game of Gold, I really dug season 1. I was excited to see 10 seasons of the show, or at least maybe a season 2 at the very least. So I was definitely caught off guard by this sort of not quite announcement, but kind of like assumption.
Yeah, that's a surprise, honestly. I mean, they might make a season 2 a couple years down the road if they get a little bit of money or something. But yeah, like season 1 wasn't perfect by any means, but it was a lot of fun to watch. It was interesting to see the little editing tricks that they would do and the little games that they included. And the different personalities in the game, right? They had some of the big names like Maria Ho and Dan Negreanu, and then some more obscure people. So it's a shame if they don't make a season 2, because I definitely think they could improve off of season 1 and make a fun show. And season 1 was fun to begin with.
But speaking of fun stuff, so as you guys might have noticed, that during the interview of Rec.poker, there was their nightly home game going on. So for the first hour of that tournament was during our interview part of the night, and then the game continues on afterwards, obviously. And so about 47 players sat down for this Rec.poker home game, 45 Rec.poker guys and then us two. And for that poker, I mean, obviously when you're being interviewed, it's kind of hard to... I mean, I was pretty able to focus on the interview, but because I'm, for the most part with poker online, I'm usually pretty good just kind of narrowing down to, fold, bet, or raise or whatever pretty quickly and then get back to the conversation. But that first, I want to say like 20 minutes just went very well. I got aces a couple of times, flopped a set of aces. One guy shoved, like 5-bet shove, jacks, and I had aces. I got to like 8,000 chips when I was starting, stuck up 3,000 very early. And so I was kind of in like autopilot in that 7K, 8K chip range for the rest of that hour, which was nice. And I know that you had some pretty good success too. I think you were above me in the chip counts for that first half hour.
I had kings like 5 times. I had aces a couple times. I had ace king a lot. There was one moment where I was in the middle of giving an answer and 3 players went all in at my table. So there was like a brief moment where I just sort of like looked away at the table and I was like, what the heck is going on? I still managed to talk, but
yes.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. After the first hour, I mean, again, I was still doing okay. I had more chips than you for most of the tournament, I think, until the final table or so. But then I started to gas out because I don't like staying up late. And it was close to midnight by the time. It was actually after midnight when I think I busted. It was shortly after midnight. But I was just like absolutely exhausted. And I'm just like staring blankly at my computer as I'm being chipped down. I played okay. Because I kept getting a lot of hands and I would be able to raise and take the blinds. But yeah, I don't recommend playing poker at midnight. Go to bed.
Well, a lot of people do play poker way past midnight, but in your case, I know that you're more of a morning person than a night person. Really, after that first sort of hour, I was kind of on autopilot in that I was just kind of in the middle, sort of slowly sinking. Like when they were down to the final 3 tables and maybe the final 2 tables, I was just kind of hanging in there. I was always in the bottom half of the field, and then by the time the final table bubble came along, I was really thinking that I was like in like 10th of 11 players left. Like you were like 9th or 8th or something like that. We were just sort of hanging in there, and it kind of to me felt like it had the similar energy to like a Mind Sport Olympiad tournament as far as the the quality of play. Perhaps I mean Rec.poker, their players were perhaps a touch less tight than the MSO. I feel like the medals are a big deal for the players, so that's why they're a bit more knuckled down, not as aggressive. But I definitely felt like I was not out of my element. I just, I had a pretty good, if it took my average hand quality, it was on the pretty high side. I felt like I definitely got more than my fair share of premium hands and sort of, maybe tier 2 hands. So I was able just to keep myself alive there. There were a couple of players that were very aggressive that I just sort of felt like if I can just wait them out, then I can, ladder up here. And then before you know it, I knock out a player in 15th place, and that gets me, pretty good chip boost. And then by the final table, I mean, we're both still in there. I was very impressed because I was just worried about embarrassing ourselves and just sort of, flaming out in the first, few bust outs in the tournament. And I'm glad that we had some sort of just like guest on the podcast, good karma, juju rocking, because we were just, bit by bit, the players are going out one by one. And when they were down to 7 players, I was pretty much just a short stack from 7-handed, maybe down to like 4-handed straight. And I'm just kind of hanging in there. And I got a big double up at one point. I think I won 2 flips. One was with 6 left. That got me a little bit higher. And then with 5 left, I won another flip. I think I had like ace queen against 7s, and then maybe like, I don't know, I think 6s against ace 10 or something like that. So that was nice. And then unfortunately, Sam, as I'm sort of chip climbing, you were, in the middle of the pack for the, maybe the second act of the final table before just kind of slowly blinding your way down. I know that you had a pretty crazy final hand, though. Why don't you tell me about that?
I had ace queen, so I think I had maybe like 10 bigs or something like that, maybe a little shorter than that. So anyway, I shoved ace queen. I got called with eights, flopped an ace. So all right, here we go. And then I think the turn gave him a straight draw, and the river he hit his straight, so he was a six-outer.
I hit the 8.
Oh, okay, he had a six-outer going into the river, I think, and then he hit
a set. Yes.
Yeah, so it's what happens. I mean, I wasn't upset about it, and again, it was midnight, and I was exhausted, so I was like, all right, whatever. Ben was still in the tournament, of course. So final 3 left. Ben had medaled, of course, so I was curious to see because. As Ben mentioned, I mean, he had been the short stack for most of the final table. It was really around we were 6-handed for like a half hour.
That was probably the longest stretch of no bust outs in the final.
Yeah, nobody was busting out. It was sort of like raise and take it for, at least for me, a lot of raise and take it. But you were the short stack for most of it, and you're like just slowly chipping up, and then there you were 3-handed. And I thought like, okay, the odds are against you. You weren't the top stack at the time. But I felt like, you had a good shot to close out, and it was, I obviously stayed and watched.
Yeah, so the key hand in 3-handed play was I had kings, and the other player just went crazy all in a face king. So my kings held up, and that got me into the chip lead. And then I managed to bust a player with aces when they had 7, so which kind of reminded me of the main event a couple years ago. Adam Walton went all in with 8s when I think it was Weinman had aces. So it was kind of reminding me of that situation a little bit. And then I get to heads up, and we're pretty much equal in chips, enough that like one hand swings the lead, in a relatively small pot fashion. So lead swinging back and forth. At this point, it was really the first time I was able to kind of to hunker down and analyze their style of play, because at this point we're heads up. It is late, but at least I can focus on one player and really lock in. And I kind of picked up on his betting habits a little bit, and that was sort of, I think, what was enabled me to turn the tide, because the first part of heads-up play didn't go too well for me. I was definitely down. I think there was like 140,000 chips in play. I was down to about 30-something thousand. He had about 100,000 plus. And when I got below like 45,000, he would just constantly 3x raise from the button / small blind. And I would usually fold because I would have, 7-3 or whatever, but I was folding a lot of small blinds with rags, and so I think he kind of pegged me as sort of playing really tight. So I sort of played up on that and then started raising light back. I once 3-bet shove 9-5 suited, for example, won down his raise a few times, and then there were just 2 big cooler-ish hands that got me the win. One was I had ace jack. And the board came out like 5-5 deuce, ace, or something like that. And I had ace jack, he had ace 8, so he made a big raise on the river, and I called and won a big pot. And then the last hand, I had of all things jack 3 suited and river to flush, and I believe he rivered it straight, and he he bet like half pot on the river, and I just shoved over it trying to end it, and I think he thought I was bluffing because he had probably eventually realized maybe I was playing back at him a little bit, so maybe I level ward him a little bit. So I took down the tournament, and I guess in the biggest win of my life. I mean, I've won other tournaments before on years ago on party poker or whatever, but not really like that was a part of a community or part of something. So this is pretty exciting, and to kind of take it down, it was just it felt good to finally win a big thing like this.
Yeah, I mean, there was also you had the lead at one point, then you lost a big pot, and you were down, I remember, maybe 2-1 at one point. So, I mean, you came back to win. You really played really well in the final table.
Thank you. Yes, I think I made 2 bad river calls where I was kind of bluff catching, but if you take away those 2 mistakes, really, I think I played, as far as my kind of poker, pretty much, as good, as high as my ceiling is in poker, as good as I possibly could. So I'm glad that it showed in the final results. And again, 4th place for you, very impressive. I'm happy for you. And I think we impressed the Rec.poker crew, because they, who knows what their expectations were of us to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a fun interview. I mean, they said that they'd seen a little bit of our podcast before. A couple people said that.
Yes.
But again, the conversation flowed very naturally. I think Ben and I both talked about ourselves outside of poker as well. It wasn't just a poker conversation. Our parents were watching, and they were both very excited to see us.
And my twin brother also watched after the fact too.
Yeah.
And I think your hair was a big hit. That was pretty funny, and I think that you had some really great witty one-liners. So I think they appreciated that a lot too.
Yeah, and again, thank you guys for having us. We're happy to come back on the show whenever you want, or you can come on our show whenever you want. Whatever you want to talk about, we're happy to have you back on. So
yeah, and something that did come up was how our brother Nick, he did a podcast with a friend of ours, Aaron Robertson, and we have some preliminary talk. We might do a Game of Gold rewatch with Aaron Robertson, a guy who has reviewed hundreds of thousands of hours of reality TV, and so it can be kind of fun to rewatch a show like Game of Gold with him, someone who's not as in the poker mindset as we are, but a big reality show fan, to kind of get a sense of, because a big talking point was during our review of Game of Gold was how it would appeal to non-poker fans, and he's the ideal person to be a third member to cover that.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Rec.poker, about reality shows and how we regarded poker television and all that. So it's kind of funny to bring it all together and have Aaron on. And Aaron's a great guy. So
and I think it'd be like the 10th-ish anniversary of the Rosenfeld podcast that Nick and Aaron had. So that'd be kind of a fun little reunion type thing. Not that Nick would join, but maybe Aaron, maybe we could convince him.
Nick.
You never know.
Quick cameo appearance.
Exactly. And that's really, we just wanted to kind of give a little, reaction. We like to, react to our interview moments. And it was again, it's a very fun night with a great ending. But hopefully you guys will check out Rec.poker on your end and maybe find something that you can appreciate too. They have 700 plus episodes, and so we only have 102. We got a long way to go to catch up. So we'll keep working on that. And until next time, guys, enjoy your poker. Enjoy your TV. Enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.